I got 3 seconds to grab your attention. We're recasting Star Wars.
On the street, under pressure, the city angels meet, making a stand against the odds. You can feel the heat. It's making or breaking, try to survive. Don't ever say never, keep your dream alive. Around the clock, we're gonna rock the rhythm of the street. Down the block, around the clock, we're gonna rock the dreams you hear. The streets can talk. Wanna be somebody, be a contender. Gotta reach for the sky. If you want it, fight for it, or kiss it goodbye.
Alright, before we get started, where'd I put my water? Let's see. How can I use the Force to get my water? How did Princess Leia use the Force? It works! Let's start off with Luke Skywalker. I went back and forth on this one. AI told me to use John Travolta, but if I'm being honest, I can't see John Travolta in that role. I just can't. So I'm gonna go with Leif Garrett. Now, I know what people think of Leif Garrett now, but believe it or not, he was a pretty big name and star in the late 70s and early 80s. If you don't think he can act, just go watch Cheerleader Camp. I think he's young enough to play a 16, 17-year-old kid, however old Luke's supposed to be. He has that young, boyish look. He's a good-looking kid. And I don't know. I mean, is Mark Hamill really that good to begin with? So, yeah, Leif Garrett could have played Luke Skywalker in these 3 movies. If Leif Garrett is cast, what happens with Mark Hamill? I mean, I know he didn't do much after Star Wars anyway, but does Mark Hamill go the soap opera route? Does he get a sitcom?
Hell no.
You know, what happens to his career below? Let me know what you think about that. I personally think he probably lands. He does a couple of bit spots on some TV shows in the early to mid 80s. I don't think it leads to anything big. I mean, if you can't capitalize off starring in Star Wars, then chances are, without it, you're not going to do much anyway. But yeah, I think he probably makes a couple of guest spots on a few TV shows. Who knows? Maybe he gets a recurring role in something. What's something fun he could have been in? I don't know. Princess Leia was that was probably the easiest one I had on recasting. Goldie Hawn. Like right away, I thought of Goldie Hawn when she was on that TV show Laugh-In. She was so pretty, she's funny, she's smart. Now, I'm not the biggest Carrie Fisher fan in the world, and I know that's like blasphemy for you Star Wars fans to hear, but I mean, I don't care. She's also in Scream 3 too, I think. Scream 3 too. Goldie Hawn, I believe, would have been fantastic in this role as a smart, strong-willed female lead, stands up to authority. I think she would have knocked it out of the park. Now, the question is, what does this do for her career, starring in these movies? Do we still get Wildcats? You know, we definitely still get Overboard. She's not turning down that project with her husband. But what happens to Goldie Hawn's career post-Star Wars? This is probably the most fun recast I did. Han Solo. It was so easy for me on this one. One guy stood out immediately. It's Burt Reynolds. Burt Reynolds, if he had done Star Wars, if he had been cast as Han Solo in Star Wars, first of all, he brings that swagger, that confidence. He brings all that Harrison Ford did an excellent job with, by the way. I think Burt Reynolds brings all that swagger and charisma and more. And if he were to do this movie, that would mean Burt Reynolds would be in the number 1 and number 2 grossing movie of 1977, which would just blast him into the stratosphere of fame that he can't even imagine. Now, what does that do to his career? Do we still get Stroker's Ace and Cannonball Run in the 80s? Probably not. Probably not. And then what happens with Harrison Ford? Because Harrison Ford was in American Graffiti, and I'm pretty sure that's, everybody likes to stick with their boys. Everybody has their own clique, and I'm pretty sure that's why he got cast as Indiana Jones, right? So maybe Harrison Ford still gets that Indiana Jones role, but what if he don't? Who gets cast as Indiana Jones? Maybe that's another video. If Harrison Ford doesn't land this role as Han Solo and it goes to Burt Reynolds, who gets cast as Indiana Jones? And what happens to Harrison Ford's career? I still think he has a career. I mean, I've always believed the cream rises to the top regardless, of circumstances, situations, but that's really fun to think about. And Burt Reynolds' career is really fun to think about too, in the mid to late 80s. Because he kind of stalled there for a little bit, and then he came back with like Boogie Nights, but that was like late 90s too. So Burt Reynolds as Han Solo, being cool, confident, and cocky, saying "I know," when Goldie Hawn says "I love you" to him, it's fantastic. It is great. If I'm being honest, I never liked the whole Darth Vader is played by a white guy but voiced by James Earl Jones. Like, just put the guy in there, who you wanted to look like and who you wanted to sound like. Like, just, find somebody. And I think I found somebody. You need somebody popular from the late 70s. You need someone who's kind of big and bulky and intimidating. How about Fred the Hammer Williams? Williams? I think the way I would write it is we reveal Darth Vader's face, probably in Empire, who he is. And then most of Return of the Jedi, it's Fred walking around without the mask. That's probably how I would do it. Yeah, I think that would work. Obi-Wan Kenobi is... I've actually heard a lot of people say Donald Pleasance. I don't really like that. I know why they pick him. I don't really like that one. I'm going to throw this out there. What about Steve McQueen to play Obi-Wan Kenobi? Now, I know Steve McQueen, I think he died in 1980 or 1981. So he could have been in, episode 4, The New Hope. He could have been in that one because I think we only have bit parts of Obi in the next 2. I think Steve McQueen could have played that role, and he could have done it very well. Why not? Now, obviously, I'm picking, when I'm doing this recasting, I'm picking actors and actresses that I'm kind of fond of. Now, there's a few of them I don't know much about. Like, if I'm being honest with you guys, I don't know much about Steve McQueen or Paul Newman. I don't know much about their history, their past work. I just, there's 1 or 2 things that I like them in, and that's what I'm picking. But Uncle Owen, who has a small, brief part in A New Hope. Everybody, I don't have to, if you're watching this, I don't have to explain to you who Uncle Owen is. He's kind of got a, hang on a second. He kind of gets a bad draw, a bad hand dealt to him. All he wants to do is hang out with his aunt and, spend his time on Tatooine screwing, and he kind of inherits his nephew to raise, which sucks. Especially when you don't want to have kids. Clearly, these two didn't want to have kids. They just want to hang out. So he uses Luke as a slave for his, water farm or whatever he's got going on. And he won't let him go to college or Stormtrooper Academy or whatever it's called. So who could play Uncle Owen? I like Clu Gallagher. Do I know much about the guy? No, but I love him in Return of the Living Dead. So he could play Uncle Owen to Leif Garrett's Luke Skywalker. Grand Moff Tarkin, Grand Moff Tarkin. This was an interesting one for me because he's like Darth Vader's right-hand man, or maybe Darth Vader's his right-hand man. Guys, huge fans out there, let me know in the comments. This is who I'm picking Donald Pleasence to play. I think Donald Pleasence could have knocked this role out of the park. Everybody loves Donald Pleasence if you love horror movies, but if you put him in this role as like this sinister bad guy who's willing to blow up planets, just to send a message, I think, and like Donald Pleasence was known for playing bad guys. I'm pretty sure he was like the bad guy in every James Bond movie, holding that cat or whatever. But what's fun to think about, if Donald Pleasence plays Grand Moff Tarkin in 1977 Star Wars A New Hope, does he take John Carpenter's offer for Donald Pleasence the following year in Halloween? And for Donald Pleasence, I mean, does he take John Carpenter's offer to play Loomis in Halloween in 1978? I don't know if he does. I don't think he does. And then what does John Carpenter do? Because didn't famously John Carpenter wanted Christopher Lee? Was it Christopher Lee or Vincent Price? He wanted one of those and couldn't get them. So he settled with Donald Pleasence. So what if he couldn't get Donald Pleasence? What does John Carpenter do? And then what does that do for the Halloween franchise? Taking Donald Pleasence out, does it still have the impact? I love, this is the part that I love. This is kind of why I wanted to do this part with Ronnie, just so we could have some back and forth. What happens? Because if Halloween doesn't take off as this huge slasher, do we get all those slashers in the 80s? It's just really fun to think about. So originally I had Steve McQueen as Yoda and Paul Newman as Obi-Wan Kenobi. But I walked in one of my kids' rooms the other day and they had Pixar's Cars on in the background, which, by the way, fantastic movie. Don't watch part 2, but Cars 1, fantastic. There's a older character in the movie Cars, an older car, I guess you call it, a legend, and he's voiced by Paul Newman, and that voice is so incredible.
They quit on me. When I finally got put together, I went back expecting a big welcome. You know what they said? Your history.
Now, and I understand that movie was made in the mid-2000s. Star Wars came out in 1977, but this is why I changed my pick. I want Paul Newman to voice Yoda. Now, I did some AI stuff, and I was like, is Yoda going to have a human face, and a puppet body, or a puppet face and a human body? But and that's when I had Steve McQueen cast, so here come the pictures. But now I want to do Paul Newman to voice Yoda. And I think, I know Yoda, first off, all these characters are iconic, so changing them would be blasphemy in the universe. But I know the whole Yoda voice to me has always been stupid. Like, why can't it just be like grizzled Paul Newman? It would be great. So, just peek behind the curtain. Obviously, I'm wearing a different shirt. Editing continuity is a nightmare. But this was going to be like a joke video where I put the most ridiculous cast up as possible. But then I got to thinking, what if I did it for real? And honestly, I don't know where I landed on my decision. I feel like there's a few serious ones mixed in here along with some goofy ones. But originally, I had Chewbacca kind of like a Teen Wolf situation where he's human sometimes, and then when he gets excited, or when he's ready to fight, or when he gets horny, then he turns into the Wookiee. So who is cool enough in the late 70s to play Chewbacca? There's only one man, Mr. Evel Knievel. Now, I know why you don't give any human characteristics to Yoda, Chewbacca or C-3PO or R2-D2, because when you make these movies 10 years down the road, 40 years down the road, you can still use them. You don't have to worry about any kind of human face, the actor dying. You don't have to worry about any of that stuff. They can literally live on this universe forever because of that. So I went back and forth on this. Do I make C-3PO a robot with a human face? Or, I don't know. But if we were going to give C-3PO human characteristics, like a human face, but the rest of him is a droid, I got to go Cleavon Little from Blazing Saddles. I mean, can you imagine Cleavon acting scared like he did in Blazing Saddles when he's being held hostage by himself?
Oh, help me! Help me! Help me! Somebody help me! Help me! Help me! Help me! Shut up!
I think it could work. I mean, C-3PO is kind of a comedy character anyway, right? I mean, right? He is. He's there for comedy relief in some scenes, the stuff he says. So, would Cleavon Little really make it that much worse? I don't think so. Lando Calrissian is a character that is, again, beloved. They all are. But you got a guy who comes off as a good guy, who comes off like he's friends with Han and Chewie. There's a lot of history there. That's how they got the Millennium Falcon. It's a guy you can trust sometimes, and it's a guy you can't trust. So who do you want to play that? I'm going Darwin Jostin. And again, I only know this guy from Assault on Precinct 13, Gotta Smoke. And I think he has a small bit part in The Fog, if I'm not mistaken. But to me, Landau and Napoleon Wilson are two very similar characters. Napoleon Wilson in Assault is obviously in jail for murder. But when push comes to shove, is he that really of a bad guy? He helps out. He saves the day, arguably, and doesn't try to escape, doesn't try to leave. I mean, I think he could pull off this role as Landau. I think he would have been really good in it. One of the coolest mercenaries, is that what you call him? Mercenaries? Hitmen? I don't know. Boba Fett. Really cool character, awesome look. But who should be the guy behind the mask? I'm going Fred Ward. Tremors made me a huge Fred Ward guy. And then later in life, his comedy made him a legend to me. He has scenes in the movie Road Trip that is hilarious. He has a small bit part as Joe Dirt's dad that is fantastic. And then just recently, I went back and watched 1979 Escape from Alcatraz, and he's so good in that. So absolutely, Fred Ward could have played Boba Fett in Star Wars. So let me know in the comments, guys, how did I do? Recasting Star Wars, the first three movies in 1977, only using, actors from the late 70s and early 80s that made sense. Like, for instance, I wanted to use Ralph Macchio as Luke. And even though Ralph Macchio and Leif Garrett are the same age, they were both 16, 17 around this time, I didn't use Ralph because he only had one credit to his name. Like, he appeared in a TV show. I don't recall the name of it, but he appeared in a TV show, whereas Leif Garrett had, 7 or 8 credits to his name already. So it made more sense to cast Leif Garrett. And I was going to throw something else at you guys, because doing some research, he was only 2 years older than Mark Hamill. What about Jeff Bridges as Luke Skywalker? Could he have pulled that off? The only reason I didn't say Jeff Bridges is Jeff Bridges had that deep voice. He still had that deep voice at a young age. Like, listen to this clip.
It smells like shit.
And I don't know if you would buy him as a 17-year-old kid like you do Mark Hamill crying about the robots and crying about, Space Academy or Space School or whatever. So I didn't do that. But let me know what you think down in the comments. Is this a pretty good casting? I mean, I can't believe you took James Earl Jones out. Who cares? I replaced him with Fred the Hammer Williamson. Effing bit me! Bit me!
Come on, sex machine!
So let me know. Happy Star Wars Day. May the 4th be with you. You ever wonder where that started? When did May 4th become the Star Wars thing? I like to think that sometime in the 80s, someone heard Mike Tyson say, "May the Force be with you." Have a good day.